Well, good morning. Um, First of all, I just wanted to tell you I have a standing date to go bike riding with my son every Sunday morning, and I forgot to tell him. Couldn't do it today. So this morning I sent him a quick text, said, sorry, can't go bike riding with you today. I got a speaking engagement. And he said, oh, okay, where are you going to be speaking? And I told him, the Mosaic UU Church. Now, my son knows I don't really have much in the way of religious beliefs, so he was a little curious. And I said, no, it's the UU. This isn't exactly, yay, God, let's all pray and jump around and sing. It's more Bill and Ted be excellent to each other as a philosophy. And he wrote back and said, oh, well, in that case, cool. Party on, dudes. So my son wishes you all a party on, dudes, this morning. Wilfred, good to see you this morning. I haven't seen you in a while. I like your parrot. I'm going to go see Carrie later on today. I'm going to bring him your warm wishes. I was looking forward to teasing him today, but I'll have to tease him in the hospital instead. I did want to check out our competition today. See if I can find what I'm looking for real quick. Give me one quick second. Okay. Yeah. Knowing that we're Zooming rather than live and in person, I thought, people have a lot more choices than they used to have. So I was going to look around and see what am I competing with this morning. The UU in DeLand. This morning, their service is pretty much just a business meeting. They're planning out what they're going to be doing for the 2021 year. Sounded kind of dull. So, okay. The UU in Ormond Beach, they have a guest speaker talking about African-American author Richard Wright. That sounded pretty interesting. Of course, Richard Wright's been gone for over 60 years, but still, I'm sure there's going to be an interesting talk. But the UU in New Smyrna Beach, they have Central Florida Raging Grannies this morning. The Central Florida Raging Grannies. I got to share this with you to see what you're missing. Yeah, the Central Florida Raging Grannies. Now, that particular clip was from the North Carolina Raging Grannies, but they are here in Central Florida and Volusia County, so you might want to book them someday. It'd be pretty interesting to have. When Judy invited me to speak, she said, when do you want to talk? And I said, let's pick the Sunday duration because we know that's going to be an interesting time to talk. But then she wanted me to tell her, so what are you going to talk about? What's your topic? Give me the content. What exactly are you going to have in there? That's a challenging question. And it reminded me of several years ago when we had a banquet coming up, and I actually had our grand poobah of the ACLU of Florida, Howard Simon, coming to be our speaker. It was during the George W. Bush administration. And I kept pressing Howard, like, what are you going to talk about? What is your speech going to be? And it was a couple of weeks before the event. And he finally just looked at me and said, George Bush is in office. Who knows what we're going to be talking about a few weeks from now? How do you expect me to plan that? And so it was not easy to come up with finalizing what my thoughts were going to be for today. Because I got a feeling, Tracy mentioned we were probably all watching the inauguration. I got a feeling I'm not the only one that was watching on pins and needles, thinking, is this actually going to happen? Are we really going to get through this? After an insurrection that took place just 2 weeks prior, was anybody absolutely confident that we weren't going to have people with torches and pitchforks marching on the inauguration? I mean, who really knew what was going to happen? And then once it was done, once everybody was sworn in, and once everybody went back inside, there was this nationwide collective sigh of relief. Like, we're here. We did it. We got through this. So I want to start off with just a little bit of time travel with you. I've mentioned this, I think, before, but many of you I don't know. I haven't seen you before, but um, as many of you know, Davey and I were very instrumental in getting the Volusia Flagler chapter of the ACLU started around 2003, 2004. But there was an ACLU chapter in Daytona Beach back in the 1960s. And I was fortunate enough to meet one of the people that helped found that, a gentleman by the name of Charlie Barcelo. Some of you may have known Charlie. Charlie was on that ACO board in the 1960s. He was also on our local board around 2004, 2005. Um, Charlie passed away a couple of years ago, about 2019. His wife Audrey is still very active in the New Smyrna Beach UU. Charlie was one very, very involved over there. But I remember asking him, what happened? You had an active ACLU chapter here in the 1960s. Where'd it go? And he said they disbanded because Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act into law. And he said, we're done. We've done everything we set out to do. We've passed civil rights legislation. And I couldn't help but remember that conversation recently as our new president was sworn. There are a lot of people feeling like, whew, we're all done now. We can relax. Well, obviously that was not true back in the 1960s, and it is equally not true today. So let me take you for a shorter time travel. 4.5 years ago, 2016, Barack Obama was ending his second term of office. We all knew that Hillary Clinton was about to be elected the next president of the United States. So imagine, we had the first Black president ending his term, and we had the first woman president about to be elected. This country was progressing. And the ACLU at that point, since we were founded in 1920, we were then 96 years old. The ACLU was 96 years old. And we're trying to think, what do we want to accomplish in the next 4 years that we can celebrate when we have our 100th birthday in 2020? And we thought, well, prison reform makes sense. We were looking at the fact that the United States has more prisoners than any other country. We have the highest percentage of our population in prison of any country in the world. And to make matters worse, we have more and more private prisons. So we have for-profit prisons that are encouraging more and more people to be locked up. The purpose of prison is supposed to be to protect society, and at least half of the people in prison are there for non-violent crimes. And so the ACLU's big, audacious goal was that by 2020, we were going to try to get the prison population reduced by 50%. Get the people there out of there. Take away the profit motive to running a prison. That's what we were planning to do during the 4 years of the Hillary Clinton administration. But November 2016 happened, and nothing was about to go as planned. Some of you may know who Daniel Dale is. Daniel Dale is the reporter from CNN who was assigned to fact check Donald Trump from day one. He's been following him for over 4 years. And he did a column recently about the 15 most notable lies told by Mr. Trump during his 4 years in office. And he said the first lie that he told, which may seem really insignificant on the surface, was not how big the size of the crowd was for the inauguration. No, before that, on Inauguration Day, Mr. Trump said, the rain just never came during my speech. It waited until we finished and went inside before it started raining. And Daniel Dale points out, that's absolutely not true. It was raining during his inauguration speech. Anybody who was there, anybody who was watching it on TV knew that it rained during his speech. What became quite obvious from day one was we were entering an era of, are you going to believe me, or are you going to believe your lying eyes? And the tone was then set for the next 4 years. Now, as far as the ACLU is concerned, all bets were off. what was going to happen? What were we going to do? We suddenly had to become more reactive than proactive. Instead of working on prison reform and other sane, achievable goals, we now had the President of the United States violating the Constitution on a regular basis, such as banning entry into the country if you happen to be a Muslim. We immediately filed lawsuits about that, and that's the way it went for 4 years. Stunning statistic. In the first 4 years of George W. Bush's office, the first 4 years of G.W. Bush, the ACLU filed 13 legal actions against his administration. By contrast, in August of 2020, we celebrated our 100th birthday by filing our 400th legal action against the Trump administration. 400 as of last August. Okay, but now we've turned the corner. Ding dong, the witch is dead. It's the end of an era. Right before the election, I saw this bumper sticker. I saw this on a car and I thought, oh, geez, really? More evangelicals praying for Donald Trump? But I must admit, I was curious enough to look up Psalms 109, verse 8. The King James Version, let his days be few and let another take his office. That's okay. Okay, you got me. I can see where we should pray for Mr. Trump. And now someone has taken his office. But while it's a time to celebrate, this is absolutely not a time for complacency. Just like back in the 1960s, this is the time for us to wipe the crazy off our face and get back to work at the stuff that got sidetracked for 4 years. For Christmas, Davey got me Barack Obama's new book, A Promised Land. And I'm only about 4 chapters into it, but there's a very specific theme in the book. And I also heard this theme echoing during the inauguration, including the poem by Amanda Gorman. Drawing this distinction between what America is and what we say it should be. He points out that we've had this dilemma ever since we began the country. We started off with founding documents that proclaimed all men are equal, except, of course, for those ones that we own, because those guys are fifths of a man. We keep telling ourselves we have a wonderful country, but sometimes we believe we're already there, and we're not. We're trying to achieve it. Amanda Gorman, in her poem, there was a line that she has in there about America isn't broken, but it's unfinished. Now, I got to tell you, I've never been a gung-ho flag waver for America. That just really hasn't been part of me. I lived through the era when we were told, America, love it or leave it. And I knew back then, even as a naive 18-year-old, that was a stupid way to look at the world, that it was totally possible to love it and change it, that it was possible to love it and improve it. But even though I'm not a big flag waver, I've got to tell you, when I heard Lady Gaga sing the national anthem on the steps of the Capitol, where 2 weeks earlier a mob had tried to overthrow democracy, when she turned and looked at the flag and sang the line that our flag was still there, I got chills. And then when I heard Jennifer Lopez, Puerto Rican girl from the Bronx, sing, "This land is my land," I had tears. But this is all what we want to be. It's not who we are. For 4 years, we've been told things, for example, that institutional racism doesn't exist. Implicit bias just doesn't exist. Well, now, finally, we're willing to admit it does exist. But that doesn't make it go away. We have a ton of work to do. I want to show you a 2-minute clip from the HBO series Newsroom from 2012. Just going to play 2 minutes of this for some hard truth.
Can you say why America is the greatest country in the world?
Well, our Constitution is a masterpiece. James Madison was a genius. Declaration of Independence is, for me, the single greatest piece of American. You don't look satisfied.
One's a set of laws and the other is a declaration of war. I want a human moment from you. What about the people? Why is
It's not the greatest country in the world, Professor. That's my answer.
You're saying
Yes.
Let's talk about fine.
Sharon, the NEA is a loser for a penny out of a paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It costs money. It costs votes. It costs airtime. Columns. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so smart, how come they lose it? Always. Hey, and with a straight face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom. All right. And yet you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. One of them is there's absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are without a doubt a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what you're talking about.
Now, I did not go back and fact check all of those numbers that he rattled off from 2012. But the point he was making, I think, was quite clear. You can love your country without pretending that it's something it is not. We do live in an amazing country. But it's amazing because of what we aspire to do, what we want it to become. We want it to be better. We're never going to be perfect. We should never be satisfied, but we need to make it better. Let me give you a quick list of some of the topics we're working on here in Florida now that we're done with the craziness of 4 years. For everything that I'm about to tell you, we either have lawsuits going on or we have legislation that we are fighting against. Locally, Port Orange is trying to pass an unconstitutional panhandling ordinance. We just got word of that this week. Once again, they are trying to take away people's First Amendment rights. Daytona Beach got away with it, so now Port Orange is trying to do it as well. And I know Kerry has a very warm spot in his heart for this issue. Hopefully I can get some advice from him as to things that we can do here. Voting rights. Y'all know that we passed Amendment 4 to restore the voting rights for ex-felons. But what you may or may not know is that the government and Florida's legislation passed laws that said that you can't vote if you're an ex-felon if you owe any money. So out of the 1.4 million Floridians that should have been allowed to vote, 80% of those have been blocked from voting. 65% of us said this is what we want for the state of Florida, but our legislature and our governor have stopped it, and we're going to fight that. We have one major donor that is saying, let's take it to the Supreme Court. We're not sure that's the wisest move to make at this point with the existing Supreme Court. What we may wind up doing, keep an eye on the news. We may have a brand new petition drive to rewrite that and make it ironclad and get it passed again in 2022 so that we don't have to argue with the governor anymore. 1.4 million people their voting rights. We're still working on criminal justice. We still have all the same problems that I mentioned earlier about the prison system. We're working on reforms such as mandatory minimum sentences, unaffordable bail. That means you've got to be in prison because you don't have any money. We have free speech issues that we're working on. We obviously have immigrant rights issues that we are working on. We still have LGBTQ issues that are front and center. We have police practices that we need to be dealing with. We have privacy issues that we need to be dealing with. We have racial justice, religious liberty, student and youth rights, women's rights, reproductive freedom. Every one of these things, if you're interested, you can go to the ACLU of Florida website and look them up and see what are the cases that we've got going right now, or what's the pending legislation that we are lobbying against and trying to get knocked down. But now that we have finally ended 4 years of knee-deep crazy, we can get back to working on these issues. So let me wrap this up with a quote from our current ACLU of Florida Executive Director, Micah Kubik. Micah wrote an editorial that was published just this week. And I want to tell you the way he ended it, because I think this kind of shows us where we need to go. He said, "We can create a Florida that is more just, more equal, and more free. To see the path towards justice, democracy, and equality in Florida, we must make our own way. We make the way, and we can do it together." Thanks, guys.